issue facing particularly Cape Cod and importance of a public health need to address. Recently, Cape Cod Times had an article highlighting, unfortunately, the extremely high incidence of different types of forms of skin cancer in this area. So this is an opportunity for us to be proactive, to be thinking about how to protect ourselves and our families. So today we have invited Rita Mitchell to join us to talk about this subject. And I've had the privilege and pleasure to know Rita for the last 20 years. Rita is a retired nurse from Barnstable County Department of Health and the Environment with more than 40 years of experience. She's worked not only in this area, but in many other areas of public health need, including establishing tick safety programs and a very long list of other areas that have served this community well. It is really my privilege, my pleasure to introduce Rita to talk to us about this important subject. And we also have, she's brought with her today some handouts on sunscreen tips and protective clothing, recommended brands of skin care, and just in general information about the subject. So I'm just going to hand it over without any further ado. Thank you, Rita.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for coming. I know this is a very busy time of year. Cape Cod goes nuts in the summertime. So we're going to talk about sun safety, and we're going to do a little bit on skin cancer prevention also. And as Jane said, I'm with Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment. So some facts. About 5 million skin cancers are diagnosed in the U.S. every year. That's a lot. And most are caused by solar UV radiation. Now, the rate of new melanoma diagnoses, which are responsible for 75% of all cancer deaths, was 26% higher in Massachusetts than the national average. So we have more than our fair share of melanoma. Nantucket County has one of the 5 rates of new melanoma diagnosis among counties nationwide, and it's 146% above the national average. The towns of Barnstable and Yarmouth are also pretty high up as far as the state of Massachusetts is concerned. So do UVA and UVB rays damage skin? Well, of course they do. UVA and UVB rays make it through our atmosphere. We have a nice cloudy day today. If you think you could go sit on the beach for 5 or 6 hours and not get a sunburn, you're wrong. You could. They penetrate the skin's outer layers, the dermis and epidermis, and that's where the areas are that skin cancers develop. In the short term, UVB rays cause sunburns. UVA rays go much deeper, and they go deeper in the skin, damaging the skin structure, which causes wrinkles, and we don't want those. All UV rays damage skin, increasing the risk of skin cancer. So solar UV radiation causes up to 90% of visible changes commonly attributed to aging, including wrinkles. We go out to Hawaii quite frequently. Our son lives there, so we have to go to check on him. And we were at the beach one time, my husband and I, and we saw a woman. It looked like somebody who had like elephant skin. And here is a picture of what, this is not a picture of this woman, but this is what she looked like. She was quite brown, but the wrinkles were just amazing. But summer is not the only time you're at risk for sun damage. In fact, one of my favorite stories, I was at the mall and we were doing Skin Analyzer, where you look in and you see all the damage you've done over the years. And I had a gentleman that came up and he said, you know, I was down in the Caribbean and I used my sunscreen and I did not get a sunburn. It was wonderful. I really did what I should. And he came back and it was wintertime and he went skiing. He got a sunburn skiing between the elevation, the reflection off the snow, and the sun was just intense that day. That's when he got his sunburn. So everyday exposure counts. It kind of adds up over the time. You don't have to be actively sunbathing to get a damaging dose of the sun. How many of you like to go out and garden? Okay, you should still be taking protections then. You should have your sunscreen on. I think a lot of times we think of sunscreen, yep, we're going to the beach, we need to put this on. But we really need to be a little more aware and have it. Now, my husband and I have a convertible, which is not open today because it's not warm enough. But if we don't use sunscreen and we're out in that for any length of time, we're going to get burned. So we need to practice the sun protection basics all year round. So use the sunscreen. We have physical sun blockers such as zinc oxide, titanium oxide, and they start working as soon as they're applied. The chemical blockers, oxybenzone and avobenzone, they should be applied about 30 minutes before you're going to be out in the sun. They need time to absorb into the skin and to do their job. So one of the handouts, as Jane was saying, is a listing of recommended products, which I think is very helpful. So use the sunscreen. Use a broad spectrum UVA, UVB sunscreen with an SPF of 15 or higher. Now, what does that mean? What does SPF 15 mean? Well, it means that if you're a person who usually starts getting reddening of the skin in about 20 minutes, if you use an SPF 15, it will actually protect you about 5 hours or 15 minutes times the 20 minutes, okay? And we're going to be going over different skin types and where people fall into that a little later in the presentation. For extended outdoor activity, use a water-resistant broad spectrum with an SPF of 30 or higher. And the American Cancer Society really likes 30 or higher for the SPF. But how much should we put on? I think most of the time people put on less than they need, possibly because of cost. But chemical sunscreens, about an ounce, which is the size of a shot glass, if anyone wants to know. But for the face and body, about a teaspoon size if it's for the face only. So if you're going out completely dressed and you're doing your gardening or whatever, maybe just protect your face. Chemical sunscreens use 1/3 to 1/2 as much because they absorb better. And they cover larger areas. Here's our shot glass. So applying sunscreens, you want to make sure you apply to often missed spots. Now, you're not going to put sunscreen right on your lips, but you'll be able to get some kind of a lip screener that you can put on. Around the ears. Very common for men to develop skin cancer on their ears because they wear baseball caps rather than a wide-brimmed hat. Well, wide-brimmed hat with about 3 or 4 inches around is definitely much more protective. You want to do the scalp if the hair is thinning, which happens to many of us. The neck, hands, and feet. And don't forget the bottom of your feet and the backs of your legs. Many years ago, the first time Tom and I went to Hawaii, this was before our son moved there, we went snorkeling at Hanauma Bay. Beautiful place, colorful fish, the whole 9 yards. He did not get the sunscreen on the back of the legs and the bottom of the feet, and he was miserable. Weren't you, dear? Yes. So here's someone who who just wore the baseball cap. And this man obviously had glasses on, because we need to protect our eyes also. But he kind of forgot to put anything anywhere else. So applying sunscreen, reapply at least every 2 hours. And this is especially important if you're going to be in the water, or if you're sweating quite a bit. So as this cartoon said, I told you to wear sunscreen. Ultraviolet protection factor, or UPF, indicates what portion of the sun's rays can penetrate fabrics. And especially if you have children and grandchildren, you've probably seen that they have a lot of really great fabrics now that are coming out. And they protect the kids from the sun, or any adults. Now, a loose weave fabric only has a UPF of 3. That's not going to protect you very much. A tight weave fabric, the UPF goes up to 60, much more protective. So for instance, a hat with a UPF of 50 allows just 1/50th of the sun's UVR to reach the skin. Higher the UPF, the greater the protection. That gives you an idea of some of the clothes. Dark or bright colors absorb more ultraviolet rays than white or pastel shades. So they're going to absorb it so it doesn't go to your skin. When I was kind of reading up on this last night, and they were saying if you're not sure about a fabric, hold it up to the light. The more light you can see through it, the less protective it's going to be. I thought that was kind of a good way of doing it. The more intense the hue, the better the UV defense. So, as an example, a white t-shirt, a lot of times you put a t-shirt on the kids when you think they've got enough sun, that gives you a protection of about 7. If it's wet, it gives you protection about 3. So it's not really very helpful. A dark denim shirt, long sleeve, which most people are not going to wear at the beach, it gives you a UPF of 1,700. So, if you can put up with the heat that a long sleeve shirt would cause, that's a complete sunblock. But the best are tightly woven and dark in color. That's what you want to use. Hats. We talked about hats a little bit, but a broad-brimmed hat goes a long way toward preventing skin cancer in often exposed areas like the neck, ears, scalp, and face, and a 3 to 4 inch brim that extends around. Now, a recent study at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, found that melanomas on the head and neck are particularly dangerous. They did a study of 51,704 non-Hispanic white adults with melanoma. Patients with melanomas of the head and neck were almost twice as likely to die from the disease as others. It gives you an idea of the kind of hats. Many years ago, we had a grant through the American Cancer Society, and one of the main things we did was put together a program specifically for lifeguards and beach attendants, and we were able to buy these large-brimmed hats. We also were able to put large containers of sunscreen at the beaches, which were used by anyone who went. So baseball caps and visors shade the face but leave the neck, lower face, and ears exposed. A lot of men do have problem with the ears. You can see the baseball cap protected this man for a very small area. Eyewear. This is also important because the sun can cause problems with that. UV blocking sunglasses with wraparound or large frames protect your eyelids and the sensitive skin around your eyes. Now, eyelid skin cancers, including basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma account for 5 to 10% of all skin cancers. Most occur on the lower lid, which receives the most sun, and basal cell carcinomas make up about 90%, squamous cell 5%, and malignant melanoma is about 1 to 2%. So sunglasses can help reduce the risk of cataracts later in life also. You want to watch for these signs. If you see any of these, you want to consult a skin cancer specialist or ophthalmologist, even if you're not having any discomfort from it. A lump or a bump that bleeds or does not disappear. Persistent red eye or eyelid inflammation that does not respond to medication. New flat or elevated pigmented lesions with irregular borders and growth. Unexplained loss of eyelashes. And I'm going to go back on this one. Because when this is diagnosed early, eyelids cancers especially usually respond well to surgery and follow-up, with the eye and the eyelid largely retaining normal function, but left untreated, as any cancer, we know it can be very dangerous. So you want to seek the shade, but you want to make sure you're kind of cognizant of reflective surfaces also, because the sun can reflect off the sand, off concrete, off the water, so you want to have that protection. Still need to use sunscreen and protective clothing, even if you are under an umbrella. Very important to stay away from tanning parlors and artificial tanning devices. These are really hazardous. A lot of times we bring the skin analyzer out to the high schools, and they usually have us come right before proms because the kids are going to get that base tan because they think they look great. You know, it's like in the old days, and I'm probably Jane, and you didn't look healthy if you didn't have a tan. I mean, I never used mineral oil or reflector or anything, but if I didn't have a tan living on the Cape and I went back to college, they wondered what I'd been doing all summer. But the tanning parlors and artificial tanning devices are really very dangerous. The UV radiation emitted by indoor tanning lamps is many times more intense than natural sunlight. Dangers include burns, premature aging of the skin, we're back to those wrinkles again, and the increased risk of skin cancer. So with indoor tanning for basal cell carcinoma, new research indicates that people who tan indoors 4 times a year increase their risk of developing the non-melanoma skin cancers, basal and squamous cell carcinoma by 15%, and their risk of melanoma by 11%. So very important, don't let your teens tan in indoor tanning booths. Really important. You know, we keep cigarettes away from them to a certain age. We keep alcohol away from them. They shouldn't be doing tanning. So some of the skin cancers that we have to be concerned about, squamous cell, and you can't tell just by looking at these what they are. So it's important to say, if you see something and say, well, that kind of looked like her picture of basal cell or squamous cell, so it's not really important. That's not the case. You really need to be seen by a dermatologist to have it looked at and possibly biopsied. And we'll go over some of the things that would indicate that you need to go. Basal cell looks a little different. This is what you really need to be aware of. These are the A, B, C, D, and E of lesions on our skin that we need to be aware of. Asymmetry. If you draw a line through the middle of the mole or whatever you have, if it's different on each side, it's asymmetric. Border irregularity. You can see how it's very bumpy. Color. It could be different colors in different areas of that same area. 1/4 inch diameter, that's about a pencil eraser size. If it's bigger than that, that's a key that we need to pursue. Evolution means it's changing over time, and I've also seen the E stand for elevation. If you're starting to get an elevation of the bump, it's not smooth against your skin, definitely want to take an eye on that. Keep an eye on that. Yes?
Going back to the color, so the picture you're showing there is, you know, is it the black color or is it the fact that there are multiple colors?
It's the fact that it's the multiple colors on this one. You see the light and then it has the darker, so it's the different ones. Yep. So you want to protect your children and teach them sun safety at an early age. And I will say that over the years when we've done the skin analyzer and we go to like middle school or elementary school or we're at a fair where the parents have the kids, we're seeing a lot more protection being given to the children. We're not seeing the damage that you see if I look through it. In fact, many times with the kids, I will look through it and have them get on my side so they can see the damage that's been done over the years. Because I'm going to be 70 in about a week, and I've had a lot of sun exposure. Anyone working in the public can be a powerful example, so especially the lifeguards that are working with the kids. So healthy habits are best learned young because skin damage occurs with each unprotected exposure and accumulates over the course of a lifetime. So sun safety for children should be a priority for all of us. We need to be the example. If we're not using it, and the stuff, they're not going to want to. Now, there's a skin classification system. It was first developed in 1975 by Dr. Thomas Fitzpatrick of the Harvard Medical School. It's called the Fitzpatrick skin type. And it's based on two different components, the genetic disposition and the reaction to sun exposure. And types range from the very fair, or type 1, to the very dark, type 6. So we'll see what this means. Skin type 1 always burns, never tans. Unfortunately, that's our son who lives in Hawaii. He is very, very fair. He's blonde. He puts sunscreen on all the time. They're at very high risk for melanoma, which is the most serious type of skin cancer. They should be using SPF 30 or higher and clothing with a UPF rating of 30 or higher. They should seek the shade when out in the sun. These people are also ones that probably shouldn't have jobs that have them out in the sun and being exposed on a regular basis. And they should have an annual skin check. Type 2, they almost always burn, rarely tan, high risk for melanoma. Again, the SPF of 30, the UPF of 30, seek the shade, and have an annual skin check. So they have a little more pigment of melanin in their skin. Type 3, sometimes burn, sometimes tan in the sun. They're susceptible to all three types of cancer, the basal cell, squamous cell, and melanoma. Sunscreen of at least 15 and sun protective clothing. Seek shade between 10 and 4. That's another really good thing to do. Type 4, tend to tan easily and are less likely to burn. That's like my son-in-law. He has Portuguese extraction. His skin is just darker, and he always tans. But I still see him putting on sunscreen, which is good. Use sunscreen, SPF of 15 or more when you're outside. Seek shade. Skin type 5, tans easily, rarely burns. Sunscreen with an SPF of 15 or more. Seek shade. They also are more likely to get acrolentigenous melanoma. It's a very virulent form of the disease, and it's more common among darker-skinned people. Now, these melanomas tend to appear in parts of the body not often exposed to the sun and often remain undetected until after the cancer has spread. And 6, they don't burn. They're still at risk for skin cancers, though. Should still be using an SPF of 15 or more and seeking shade. So 6 steps to kind of reduce your risk, to kind of put this all together. Minimize your exposure to the sun at midday and between the hours of 10 and 4. Apply sunscreen with at least an SPF of 15 or higher. Reapply the sunscreen every 2 hours. Use it even on cloudy days. Wear clothing that covers your body and shades your face. That would be our hats. And avoid exposure to UV radiation from sun lamps or tanning parlors. So in closing, we're going to open it up for questions. This person looks like they tan fairly seriously. She's aging herself fast. Any questions from anyone? Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you allowing us to come and give this talk and get this message out to your community. Okay. Yes.
I just have one question.
Yes.
There's such a high incidence of skin cancer on the Cape. Why are there so few dermatologists?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I wish I had an answer. I know my husband had to go see someone, and he saw a nurse practitioner in the dermatologist's office, but you're right, there just aren't enough people, and the wait time is considerable. The other thing to do is to talk to your regular doctor. If they think there's something that might be questionable, maybe they would refer you to a surgeon, specifically to a surgeon directly. Yes?
I just saw a dermatologist because I have a lesion here. It's been 6 months, won't heal.
Okay.
So when I went, he gave me antibiotics, ointment, said come back, we'll see if they, I had a few of them.
Yeah,
Went back and, he sort of didn't remember me, but I just said to him, I want it biopsy. And he says, well, I don't think it's skin cancer. I'm not gonna biopsy. I said, I want this biopsy. It's been
Right,
there for
right.
6 months. It's not normal.
right,
It's pre-cancer. So now I have to go back. You have to advocate, because they won't.
You
They
have to
will not
advocate
do
for
anything
yourself.
Unless you put your foot down, because they don't want, no one wants to pay.
right,
Because if you just biopsy anything, then, that's a lot of money.
right,
So
right,
you gotta, I'm a nurse too, so I've seen a lot of skin cancers, bad.
right.
So anything
I have
that you
too.
think that might not be, I had a lady that had a lesion on her leg. It was just a little tiny thing. She said it looked like a piece of rice, like it was just like a little, whatever, skin tag or something.
Yeah,
Went to the doctors, it's nothing. Wouldn't take it off, wouldn't biopsy it. It wouldn't go away, so she went back. It was melanoma, and it looked
Oh,
like
wow.
a piece of rice.
yeah,
They took out, I'm telling you, I could put my fist in her leg, that's how much they had to take out.
Right.
When it's melanoma, they just.
right. They have to take out till they find
And it
the
always
edges
looks
that,
different.
yeah,
I had another lady that had a black mole, but it developed a clear bubble over it. It was
Mhm.
really bizarre.
hmm,
Granted, the lady was pretty old, but I mean, still, she knew there was something wrong, and it was melanoma, same thing.
yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
prevalent out there.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think the idea of us being advocates for ourselves in health in general is a good thing. We need to advocate for ourselves and help advocate for our family that may not be able to do it on their own. Yes.
Are all the brands of sunscreen the same, or is there one specific brand, especially for the kids, that's better? Like, is it just the SPF that matters, or?
It's mainly the SPF that matters. I think some of the children's ones are less chemical related. That's why that handout is really good, because it has sunscreens that are highly recommended.
What about the spray stuff as opposed to the lotion?
As long as you're
foam?
covering it, as long as
Covering-
you're covering the area, I see a lot of people using that also. Yes.
I just want to reiterate what this woman said about pushing for a biopsy if you have any suspicion, because I just went through this
Okay.
and had a skin graft done.
Mm.
So it's
It's a big
very
deal.
critical.
Yeah.
It's a big
And if they think that it just looks like an aging person, blemish or whatever they
Mhm.
sometimes say, and they don't think it's quite up to speed, push them.
Yep. Excellent
Because
advice.
Can I ask, were they just GPs, doctors, or did you go to dermatologists?
They're very highly qualified nurse practitioners that are qualified to do this, but their hands are sometimes tied.
It's
As
money.
to just how much they can order. So it does come down to this, and a lot of times, in my case, that's what happened.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I at least caught mine at an early stage. It was a 0 stage, so.
Excellent, excellent. The early detection for any cancers, and especially skin cancers, are just the key. Yes.
I just want to say, I couldn't get an appointment with a dermatologist on the Cape either, and Boston Medical, they took me in, took 2 months to get in, but.
2 months is a short time compared
yeah,
to
Oh, yeah, compared. they
down
wouldn't
here.
even return my
Who wants to
phone
have to go to Boston for everything? I mean, it's wonderful that they're up there and we have them, but not everyone can get up there for things like that, but. Well, thank you so much, all of you, and thank you for sharing your stories. It's really important, and I think when it comes from someone who's sitting in the audience, who's gone through it, I know I did this talk once, many, many years ago, for the lifeguards in Wellfleet, and there was a young woman who was a lifeguard who had been diagnosed with malignant melanoma and got up and shared her story, which I'm sure made much more of an impact than me sitting up here just talking, because it was from her and she was one of them. And she had survived. She was doing well. Okay, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. 4th of July.